Okay, so listeners, you want to talk about a cold case. Get this. We're diving into one of Australia's biggest mysteries today,
Oh, yeah.
the Tamam Shud case.
Interesting.
You might know it as the mystery of the Somerton Man.
Okay.
Picture this. 1948, Somerton Beach, and a man is found dead. But not just any man. This guy's dressed impeccably like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
But he has absolutely no ID on him. No wallet, no tags in his clothes, nothing.
Now, that's strange from the get-go. You don't just find someone dressed like that on a beach, and the missing identification makes it even more unusual. It's like he just appeared out of nowhere.
Exactly. It really is. And get that there are these little details that just add to the mystery, like an unlit cigarette on his lapel, a half-smoked one on his collar, almost as if someone placed them there,
Oh,
deliberately.
yeah, those details are key, right?
Yeah.
Because they suggest someone was trying to control the scene. You know what I mean? It makes you think, was this an accident or is this something more planned?
Yeah.
And then there's the cause of death. Officially, it's unknown.
Really?
They suspected poison at the time, but they couldn't find any trace of it. So we've got this well-dressed man, dead on a beach, no idea who he is or how he died.
It's already a puzzle, and we haven't even gotten to the Tamam Shud part of it.
Oh, right.
They found a secret message, didn't they?
Yeah. Months after they found the body, they discovered a tiny scrap of paper, like tucked away in a hidden pocket in his trousers.
Wow.
And written on it were two words, Tamam Shud.
Tamam Shud. That's, Persian, right? What does it even mean?
Yeah, it translates to, it is finished, or the end.
Okay.
And to make things even stranger, it was torn from a rare copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, this book of poetry.
So they found the book this note came from. That's like finding a needle in a haystack.
It was incredible luck, really. A man came forward with a copy of the Rubaiyat, and wouldn't you know it, the last page was missing.
Wow, that's almost too perfect. Makes you think that book must be important to the case somehow, right? It has to have more clues, right?
You're thinking along the right lines. Inside the book, there were 5 lines of letters. At first glance, it looked like gibberish, just a random string of letters.
Right.
But many people believe it's a coded message.
A code! That's incredible. Have they been able to figure out what it means?
Not yet. And it's not for lack of trying. Top cryptographers, even people from military intelligence, have looked at it. They've tried everything simple. Substitution ciphers, looking for patterns within the Rubaiyat itself.
Wow.
But nothing has worked. It's almost like those letters were deliberately chosen to be meaningless.
Okay, so we've got a secret code that no one can crack, a mysterious phrase, and a dead man with no name. What else is there? There's more to this story, right?
Oh, yeah, there's definitely more. Remember that the man who found the Rubaiyat, he also found something else written inside. A phone number.
A phone number. Okay, who did it belong to? Did it lead them to anyone?
It did. The number belonged to a woman named Jessica Thompson, who went by, Joe.
Yeah, so it looks like we're getting somewhere with this, huh? This wasn't just some random number scribbled in a book. It was a direct link to someone who might have known the Somerton Man.
Okay, so did this Joe Thompson know who he was? Did she tell the police anything?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. See, when the police questioned Joe, she seemed, well, very nervous. And even though they showed her pictures of the Somerton Man, she just refused to say whether or not she recognized him.
So she was holding something back. Okay, that's intriguing. I mean, think about everything we know already. We've got this possible connection to a woman who's being evasive, a coded message no one can decipher, and a dead man who could be anyone.
Yeah, it all points to something much more complex than just a simple case of mistaken identity, And there's another layer to this, too. Years later, Joe's own daughter revealed that her mother may have been involved in espionage. She might have even worked as a Russian translator during World War II. Espionage, okay, wait, that changes things. It makes you think about the Somerton Man in a whole new light.
Right. And it really lends credence to one of the most popular theories surrounding the Somerton Man, the spy theory.
Okay, let's explore that for a second. So the Cold War was in full swing back in 1948, right? So I can see how espionage would be at the top of everyone's mind.
Exactly. It was a time of heightened tension, and Australia was very much involved in the intelligence game at the time.
Right.
So to have a man turn up dead with no identification, potentially carrying a coded message, and with a possible link to someone with espionage ties, it's almost too perfect a fit, don't you think?
Yeah, and don't forget, he had no clothing labels and no ID. That just screams spy trying to remain anonymous.
Right. It's a classic spy maneuver.
Hmm.
Back then, agents would go to extreme lengths to protect their identities, and those details, along with the possible connection to Joe, make this theory very compelling.
But hold on. Didn't we say earlier that they suspected poisoning? Wouldn't that suggest an assassination rather than, like, a spy mission gone wrong?
Oh, you're absolutely right to bring that up. That's a crucial point. The lack of any obvious injuries, the suspicion of poison, and the way his body seemed deliberately positioned on the beach, it does suggest something more calculated, something more sinister.
So, if we're entertaining this assassination theory, who would want him dead? And more importantly, why?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We know so little about the Somerton man's life or background that it's impossible to speculate on motives. Was he a double agent? Did he stumble upon information he shouldn't have? Was someone trying to silence him to protect a bigger secret? We just don't know.
It's frustrating, isn't it? All these possibilities, but no clear answers.
It is. But there's more. While the spy and assassination theories are popular, some people believe that the Somerton man might have just been caught up in a love affair gone wrong.
A love affair? You mean like a possible love triangle with Joe Thompson?
Well, it's a theory that has been explored, yeah. Remember the phrase Tamam Shud? But we know it can symbolize finality and ending, right? So what if the Somerton man, heartbroken over a lost love, chose to end his life?
So he goes to see Joe, she rejects him, and he sees the phrase Tamam Shud in the book as some sort of sign that it's all over.
Right.
I can see how that could fit into the narrative.
It's definitely a romantic, albeit tragic, interpretation of the events.
Yeah.
But we have to be honest, that's all it is, an interpretation. We have no solid evidence to support a romantic relationship between them.
Right. And I'm guessing there's always it was all just a coincidence theory too, right? Like maybe he wasn't a spy, wasn't assassinated, wasn't heartbroken.
Oh, of course. Some believe the Somerton man might have just been an ordinary guy who came across the Rubaiyat by chance, maybe found it discarded somewhere.
Right.
Perhaps his death was totally natural, and the police, in their eagerness to solve this big mystery, just read too much into the clues. They created a more complicated story than the reality.
So maybe Tamam Shud doesn't have some deep hidden meaning. Maybe it was just a random phrase from a book he happened to have.
It's possible. We have to consider all angles, right?
Right. But with all these theories and all these possibilities, why hasn't anyone been able to definitely solve this case? I mean, what's held them back?
Well, there are several major obstacles, really. Firstly, the limitations of forensic technology back in 1948 played a huge role.
Oh, yeah. They wouldn't have had DNA testing back then, would they? I mean, that would have been a game changer for a case like this.
You're absolutely right. DNA testing wasn't available back then, and that's a massive blow to the investigation. Imagine if they could have extracted DNA from the Somerton man, identifying him, potentially linking him to other people or places. It would have been completely different.
It's almost unbelievable to think that such a vital tool wasn't available to them. What else made solving this case so difficult?
Well, another obstacle was their decision to embalm the body shortly after he was found.
Wait, wouldn't embalming preserve the body and make it easier to examine later on? I mean, I'm not a forensic expert, but that seems logical.
It does preserve the body, that's true.
Yeah.
But the problem is that embalming fluids can mask the presence of certain poisons. And it introduces new chemicals that can be difficult to distinguish from any traces of toxins that might have been in his system before death.
So it's like a double-edged sword. It preserves the body, but it potentially contaminates the evidence at the same time.
Exactly. A real catch-22. So no DNA, potentially contaminated evidence because of the embalming, and then, of course, there's the code. You'd think that with all the advancements we've made in technology and cryptography, someone would have cracked it by now.
Right.
But nope, it remains unsolved.
It's almost taunting us, isn't it? This cryptic message that could hold the key to unlocking the mystery, yet it remains just out of reach.
It's a constant reminder of what we don't know, for sure. And of course, we can't ignore the fact that time has passed. A lot of time. And time hasn't been kind to this case.
What do you mean?
Well, many of the people who were directly involved in this whole story, including Joe Thompson, have since passed away, taking their secrets, if they had any, to the grave with them.
So are we saying this case is destined to remain unsolved forever? Is there no hope at all?
Not quite. Remember what we said about advancements in technology? Well, in recent years, there have been some exciting developments in the case, particularly in the field of DNA analysis. They even exhumed the Somerton man's body to try and get some more answers.
Wait, are you talking about that DNA analysis they did in 2022? I read something about that. They extracted DNA from his hair, right?
That's right. Professor Derek Abbott led the team that extracted DNA from the Somerton man's hair and used it to try and trace his ancestry. They were hoping to finally give this man a name, an identity after all these years.
And did they succeed? Did they finally figure out who he was?
Well, their analysis led them to believe that the Somerton man was most likely a man named Carl Charles Webb, an electrical engineer from Melbourne.
Wow. To think that after all this time, they might have actually identified him. It's incredible. Does this mean the case is officially closed?
Not quite. While the DNA evidence strongly suggests a link to this Carl Webb, it's not considered 100% conclusive. More research needs to be done to confirm it beyond a shadow of a doubt.
It's crazy to think, after all this time, right, even with this DNA breakthrough, it sounds like the mystery's not totally solved, like we're getting closer to the truth, but there are still so many questions that we don't know the answer to. I guess that's what makes the Tamam Shud case so interesting, right? It's like a puzzle with a bunch of missing pieces, and just when you think you've found one,
Yeah,
you realize it opens up a whole new section of the puzzle you didn't even know was there.
it's true. It really is like a detective novel. But in real life, those clues keep leading you down all these different paths. And the ending, well, if there even is one,
Yeah.
it always seems just out of reach.
Right. Okay, so let's say, just hypothetically, that they do confirm that this Carl Webb is the Somerton Man. Would that solve the entire case? Like, what about the coded message, Joe Thompson, the poison? Would any of that make more sense if we finally knew who he was?
Well, that's the real question, isn't it? You see, knowing his name would be a huge breakthrough,
Mm.
but it might not solve the whole mystery. In fact,
Yeah.
it might even lead to even more questions.
Like what?
Well, like, what was Carl Webb even doing in Adelaide? Did he have any connections to espionage? Why was his name in a book with Joe Thompson's phone number?
Hmm.
And probably most importantly, right, what secrets are hidden in that coded message?
It's fascinating to think that this man who just seemed to like vanish into thin air might have actually had a family, a life, a whole story
Right.
that we're only now, all these years later, beginning to uncover.
Imagine what it must be like for those people who have dedicated years, decades even, to solving this case.
No, right?
I wonder what they'll think of this potential identification. Will it bring them a sense of closure, or will it make them want to dig even deeper and find out more?
Oh, I have a feeling this case is far from over. Even if Carl Webb is confirmed as the Somerton Man, there are still so many loose ends, so many things we just don't have answers to.
It makes you wonder
Yeah.
if all of the advancements in technology will eventually solve this case. Like,
Yeah.
will DNA analysis or facial recognition software or something that we haven't even thought of yet finally reveal the Somerton man's story and the truth about what happened to him? Or will he always remain an enigma, forever lost to history, just leaving us to wonder about what Tamam Shud really means?
Yeah, it's a mystery for the ages. It's a reminder that some stories might never have a neat and tidy ending, you know?
And maybe that's okay. Maybe the real intrigue of the Tamam Shud case isn't about finding all the answers, but it's more about the questions that it makes us ask, the different possibilities it opens up, and the enduring mystery that captures our imaginations.
Yeah, you're right. It's a story that makes you think, makes you ask questions, and ultimately it reminds us that there are still mysteries out there in the world, right? Mysteries that are waiting to be solved, stories waiting to be told.
And who knows? Maybe, just maybe, someone listening to this will be the one to finally crack the code and unlock the secrets of the Somerton Man.
You've been listening to The Deep Dive.